It's just funny because you usually don't see the older woman and the younger man, and in this case you do, which I think it's appropriate to the story.
Go Sandra.
Yeah. I mean, she is smoking hot.
I mean, she's beautiful, and he looked older.
He did. I mean, he was also a very attractive man.
He didn't look like a baby.
No.
From Rosemary's Baby and Reagan McNeil, to Jason, Freddy, and Chucky, to Samara, Jigsaw, and Pennywise, we can't get enough. If it's blood-curdling, spine-tingling, breath-quickening, or soul-stealing, we are ready to watch it. Welcome to Hilltop Horror Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Ray Richards. With me tonight are my two co-hosts, Ann Conley.
Hey, guys.
And Helen Stewart.
Hello.
All right, tonight we are reviewing the 2018 American post-apocalyptic drama thriller Bird Box. Film directed by Suzanne Bier from screenplay written by Eric Heiserer, based on a 2014 novel of the same name by Josh Mallerman. The film follows a woman, played by Sandra Bullock, who along with a pair of children, dubbed Boy and Girl, must make it through a forest and river blindfolded to avoid supernatural entities which cause people who see them to die by suicide. Bird Box had its world premiere at AFI Fest on November 12th and began a limited release on December 14th before streaming worldwide on Netflix on December 21st, 2018. So we usually start off with talking about what our expectations were going into watching the movie and then, of course, the review. So, Ann, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start by saying that, was cruising through Netflix one night, saw this pop up as one of their new scary films featured. Love me some good Netflix production. And, of course, Sandra Bullock pops up in there and you're like, oh, wow, that's cool. Sandra Bullock and a scary movie on Netflix. How could you lose? So I thought, yeah, let's do it.
I agree with Anne. I was really excited when I heard that this was on Netflix and who the actors and actresses that were playing in the movie. I was expecting more of a slower film, given the fact that you see that they are blindfolded. But I was surprised when I didn't think it actually went as slow as I thought it was going to go.
This movie, in my mind, inhabited the same space as A Quiet Place, right? And I have not seen A Quiet Place, but I've heard a lot about the movie. And so when it came up, I was like, I don't know, it sounds like A Quiet Place, but like blind people instead of, deaf people. Yeah, I was mildly apprehensive, I guess, going into watching the movie, but we'll get into my further thoughts as we move forward. So with that, Ann, do you want to roll the trailer for us?
Sure, let's do it. Here we go. Trailer time.
Where are you? Please don't take my children. Open your eyes. Please don't take my children! How have you been feeling? Have you been sleeping any better?
Oh, rough. Then again, I never slept well before this condition.
Condition? It's called pregnancy. It's okay to say it out loud.
Something's happened.
Can you just please drive?
Did you see something?
Come inside! What's going on?
People describe seeing an entity that takes on the form of your worst fears.
Oh my God.
What are you looking at? What did you see? What is wrong with you? Please stop it!
We can't stay here.
Every contact we have had with the outside has brought us death.
Your kids,
They deserve hope.
Every single decision I have made has been for them.
they're gone.
Listen to me.
You're going on the trip now. It's going to be rough.
Hold on!
If you hear something in the woods, you tell me. If you hear something in the water, you tell me. But under no circumstance are you allowed to take off your blindfold.
Do you hear that? The creatures.
A tense mother, Mallory sternly informs two unnamed children, a girl and boy, that they will be going on a dangerous journey down a river in a boat. She strictly instructs them not to remove their blindfolds or else they will die. 5 years earlier, Mallory is pregnant and is visited by her older sister Jess while painting. Before going to a routine pregnancy checkup, they briefly discuss a strange news story regarding mass suicides throughout all of Europe, particularly Romania and Russia. However, Mallory dismisses the news story as irrelevant. While they are leaving the doctor's office later, Mallory sees a woman bashing her head into a glass panel. As panic and chaos erupt in the city, they attempt to escape in Jess's car. While Mallory is distracted by a ringing cell phone in the back seat, Jess briefly sees something that frightens her. She crashes the car in an apparent attempt to harm herself. Injured and horrified, Mallory is unable to stop her sister. Visibly affected by what she has seen, Jess steps in front of a large truck, killing herself. All right, so it starts off, and Mallory is in the present, I guess, right? The present, which is when everybody's kind of already dead. And she is pretty stern as a mom. I was like, oh, okay, she means business. Like, this is no joke. I was like, are they even her kids? That's kind of where I was at first thinking.
Yeah, I totally thought the same thing. I mean, the movie opens up and Sandra Bullock is screaming at these kids, and you're kind of like, whoa, this is a lot to take in. This is not what I was really expecting. And I mean, it is pretty brutally mean to the children.
Yeah.
And exactly to your point, you're kind of like, are they her kids? Are they related? I don't know where these kids came from. Everybody's kind of dirty. What's happening? And then the other thing that really kind of struck me right from the get-go was as she's shouting at these kids and telling them that they're going on this trip and that they have to get in the boat and they go on down to the boat. That's all part of this scene as well. Is that I just felt like it was all very rushed and they were crazy unprepared. And I didn't know what was about to unfold, but, you know, kind of being a mom, you're going, you know, where are the snacks? Are we taking a bathroom break before we go? Like all those stupid little kid stuff. You know what I mean? Do you have enough to wear? Do you have dry clothes? Do you have blankets? And she goes into like, I guess she did quickly pack some snacks and blankets actually, but you know, it all just seemed really rushed. And of course you don't have any of the details why at this point.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how they did the timeline throughout the movie. I think that helped with the fast-paced feel of it, that you weren't kind of bored because you have, you know, the beginning and then what's actually happening and then what they're trying to get to, and they like intersplice that in between, so that made this really interesting. So you did feel this like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm already panicked for this mother and two kids supposedly, because you don't know if she's a mother, and what are they going to, what is this voice over the radio, is this voice actually going to take them to safety? How did they prepare with like the whole steps to the river? That whole thing was really interesting. So you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's interesting the narrative structure they use, where it's the present and they flash back 5 years. It almost allows them to tell two different types of stories. They're in the future, or in the present, I'm sorry. It's like a survival story, kind of like the movie The Road, or you know, one of those like post-apocalyptic ones. And in the 5 years before, it's almost like a zombie apocalypse story. So I thought that was interesting how they interwove those two things together.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's really interesting. At first, I didn't like the time flashes because at first I was like, oh, like this is gonna be kind of gimmicky, right?
Yeah.
5 years earlier, and you're like, ah, okay. And like you kind of didn't know what was going on and where it was flashing, but then you quickly see her with like the butchered hair, really, 5 years ago, and then the crazy long ponytail 5 years later. So, and then of course the children, and you see her pregnant. So, pretty quickly when it flashes back, you go, all right, I'm going to assume that at least one of those are her kids, and maybe she even has twins.
That's what I was looking for during the
ultrasound.
Yeah, sonogram. Is that
Also
a correct thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I That's because that was what I was thinking. Yeah, the ultrasound. Yeah, I was waiting for her to be like, "Oh, you're twins," or "Oh, you have twins," or something, and then it didn't happen, and I was like, "Okay,
right,
all right."
Yeah. Where did the second child come from?
Yeah.
That was a big question.
Yeah, and then like you guys know, I always like to psychoanalyze the characters a little bit. I thought what was a really great scene when she's in there. Well, a couple of things when she's with her sister, which also I felt like I always learn more information from these wikis than I get from the movies. I didn't know that was her sister. I thought it was maybe like her gay partner throughout the whole movie.
Well, they referenced the boyfriend or whatever he was.
Well, they do, but that
and
doesn't mean she can't have a girlfriend.
No, I
right?
understand that, but yeah,
At first, I thought they were together.
Yeah.
But then
I did too, but then
They talked about the dad?
I guess
the
the mother,
dad and the mom and the being
yeah.
raised together and
But I
stuff.
also figured that if she was her girlfriend, that she would have known her backstory. So I was kind of like, oh. But yes, you get the Ryan reference. So you know that, okay, at some point there was a dude in her life, and, you know, it seems like the other girl, Jess, is very defensive, certainly about Mallory. So certainly being a sister, but even if she was a girlfriend, kind of saying, well, it turns out he was just a roommate, like that jerk, that deadbeat type of thing. You know, they really do a good job throughout this movie, I think, building her character, giving you some of those puzzle pieces around her upbringing and the really stern father and her inability to connect with people, and the fact that she doesn't really want to even be having a baby, or doesn't think that she deserves the baby or will be able to love the baby. And you're kind of like, where is that all gonna go throughout this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I don't want to say the point of the movie, but the emotional arc of the movie is her opening up to these kids, right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
Right.
Specifically, the girl who is not hers.
Right. That she has to forego the survivalist instinct because that ends up being a weakness.
So, I liked the way that they unspooled this whole epidemic or whatever it was, right? So, they see on the news that it started in Romania and it's in Russia, which is interesting that it started in Romania. I'm kind of trying to figure out already, like, what does that mean? I mean, what comes from Romania? Transylvania area, vampires. I'm like, why there? And then, yeah, exactly. And then they go to the hospital. She sees the girl, you know, that jumps out the window or whatever. And then chaos, right? And very soon it's like one after another, everything kind of builds. Mm-hmm. And then the sister, of course, gets whatever happens to her eyes, which I think is cool. Like they go gray, like black, whatever that sort of thing is.
Yeah, it's a
the
cool
irises.
effect.
Yeah, it's a cool effect. And then the stepping in front of the bus was pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. You know, kind of how like the irises bleed out type of thing in a way. They kind of like get infected. And I agree with Helen's point about the pacing. This is where it kicks it into super high gear, which to your point, right, that we're thinking, oh, we're going to have a little bit of a slow burn. We're going to get into it. We're going to learn more about the baby and the sister/girlfriend. And then all of a sudden, whoop, you know, right as soon as she's leaving the hospital, the woman's infected. She runs for the door, is immediately like, it's here, it's here. Then the sister gets infected 30 seconds later. I mean, right by the time they pull out and they're down the road and in movie time, really quick, flips the car. And all of a sudden, you're right into this, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed like this stepping on the gas and just getting right into it. Kind of sucked me right into the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because the beginning makes it seem very much like it's some sort of infection, or even like zombies, which spread like an infection, right? But then you come to find that it's some sort of entities. I like the fact that the wiki used the word entities, because in a lot of the coverage I see online, they say monster or monsters, but it doesn't seem to be a monster to me. It does seem to be kind of some sort of entity. But you do wonder then why it spread like sort of a disease. Why did it start in Romania and kind of move its way, or they moved their way, or whatever it was, across land bridges and stuff?
Yeah, because it's physical. I mean, they specifically say in the beginning, it's not viral, it's not pathological, which I also thought was very interesting, because you're thinking, man, you've seen this for less than 24 hours. You don't think this is airborne? I mean, that could be airborne, right? And it's still a physical spread. I don't know. I'm not a pathologist by any means, but I was a little bit like, okay, you know, you're putting in those breadcrumbs there, so we're getting that it's not viral, it's not a pathogen, it's got to be something else. I had written aliens, but I mean, I guess it's fair to say that the idea is that it's a manifestation, even come onto the earth from the earth idea, right? Like Judgment Day. So I don't know.
I think it's very unclear what it actually is,
which is fine with me. I thought that was cool.
It's either some sort of alien entity, whether it's extra dimensional, whether it's spiritual, purely spiritual, demonic type of thing, or not, or whatever.
It's totally aliens.
Mallory follows the mob and is pushed to the ground. She is rescued by a woman and led to a band of survivors hiding in a house, although the woman sees a creature and commits suicide by entering a burning car. As media communications go offline, the group tries to figure out what has happened. One survivor named Charlie surmises that demons are the cause. They all concur that simply seeing the creatures can cause humans to go insane and commit suicide. They cover the windows to shield themselves from the chaos and creatures outside. Greg attempts to use the home's security cameras to see outside as he believes a digital image of the creatures will not harm him, but is affected regardless and commits suicide.
I felt that the scene with Mallory getting pushed to the ground was dramatic and traumatic.
Yeah.
I don't know, having been pregnant twice, just thinking about that kind of like hurt me inside. And then this woman who's trying to be helpful is trying to help her to get into the house, and then it was just awful. The when she just walked into that burning car and then it just exploded. There was a lot of explosions. I was like, is this really like a thing?
Yeah.
Or is that just for the drama part of it?
Yeah, I was almost like, are the aliens blowing things up? Like, what's happening?
Right.
Like, it was like a lot of unnecessary explosions. I also feel like Mythbusters busted the fact that cars blow up. So every time that I saw that, I just went, that wouldn't really happen. But I don't know. You know, we'll probably get a lot of people that are like, no, here's the Mythbusters episode where they actually showed the car does blow up.
No, they do. But what I think is funny is how movies, if the main characters are in the car, it never blows up. But it's always like the other cars that wreck and blow up.
Right. Or, of course, as they've just exited and they're significant
Those
feet away.
movies, action movies.
To not be fatally injured.
Even
by
her
the explosion.
accident. Like, I thought, despite the fact that it didn't blow up, like, but just the flipping of the car, I was like, how fast were they going down what didn't appear to be a highway?
Well, the other thing you have to consider is the sister was actively trying to kill herself.
Right.
So,
like the flip?
she was trying to kind of do as much damage as you can do to the car.
I will say, I have actually seen a car get hit and flip.
Yeah?
And it was not hit that hard. It was maybe...
Really?
Yeah, you'd be shocked. And it was a Subaru wagon that was hit on the passenger side on the light, and they were going maybe 30 miles an hour, not super fast, and just hit it in just that right spot, or just the wrong spot, I should say, that the whole car flipped and tumbled.
Oh, wow.
Right towards me,
Okay.
actually. So it was crazy. With kids in it. I know it was
Oh,
really...
geez, that's awful.
It was crazy. But I was also like, where are the airbags? But then, I
Right.
mean, she's driving that older car.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, Lord. And then they're thrown around a little bit with like, do they have seatbelts on? Do they not have seatbelts on? So yeah, there was a lot of traumatizing imagery. Absolutely. To your point, Helen. It was like the car flipping with a pregnant woman.
Right.
She's getting out. She's stumbling around. She has to pull her belly out of that car with the broken glass and everything like
Yeah.
that. Then she's getting trampled and pushed down. Oh my gosh. Every time she fell, I was like, nope. Gonna lose the baby.
I know.
You're just like,
or at least go into premature labor. Like, you weren't expecting her to just get up and be like, okay, everything's fine once I get inside this house.
yeah, that was intense. So then the woman comes out and tries to save her, and I thought it was a very real moment when this woman's like, no, but she's pregnant, let's help her, kind of stumbles down there, loses a shoe along the way. I thought that was just like very real. And, you know, try to help her, and unfortunately becomes collateral damage.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things I enjoyed about this movie is that most of the people in the movie are decent people. Even John Malkovich's character, who's an asshole, is still a decent person when it comes down to it. They avoided a lot of the zombie trope movies where it's like the worst thing there is your fellow man. Like that's
Right.
what they like to do, and like everyone turns into a rapist and a murderer and a hoarder and that sort of thing. And they by and large got away from that. Obviously the I'm going to call them cultists or whatever they are, the converted people later on in the movie kind of serve as the bad guys.
But they had some man on man, right? You get the couple a little bit later, and they steal the car.
Yeah, they steal the car, but they're not trying to kill somebody. They just think they have to leave. Like it wasn't evil. It was just them kind of
Selfish.
freaking out and selfish. Yeah. So I appreciated that he didn't go too far down. I thought John Malkovich's character was really going to go off the deep end and end up killing somebody and whatever, and it didn't. But to the point, they get to the house, and I'm surprised to see John Malkovich. And I'm surprised to see B.D. Wong, which I'm so excited about because he used to be on SVU.
Yeah, I know, me too.
I was wondering where I knew him from.
Oh, yeah.
Law and Order.
Yeah, I know all these, these guys, actors pop up, and I was like, oh, man, John Malkovich.
I have a hilarious story about John Malkovich I have to tell you offline.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It's me and my stupidity, but...
Not for radio edit. Yeah, so I thought that was cool. And B.D. Wong playing Greg, I was really bummed. I mean, you only know this character for, I don't know, 1 minute or something like that. And then you find out that it's his house type of thing that they're harboring him. Also, I don't know why John Malkovich, who's suing him as a neighbor, is over there.
Right,
And
and
is providing him
demanding.
shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then B.D. Wong's husband is already dead somewhere,
Right.
suppose. I don't know. There's even additional backstory that you don't quite get, and you have no idea how these people even got in this house as shelter, but we're going with it. But I felt like Greg / B.D. Wong, when he was talking about the cameras, the way that he was saying heat and pixels, I thought he was saying that they were infrared. And he was like, it's not a big deal, just the heat, right? And then when he turned them, but then you're thinking there's security cameras. Who has infrared security cameras?
Right.
They're probably just a black and white, whatever. And then he turns them on and they are. And then I was thinking, was he lying to them to try to like, save them, from sort of the horror and just say, I'm going to take this one and, just deal with it? Or did he just really mean, through the screen of another screen type of thing?
Yeah,
What do you guys
I just think he meant the screen. I mean, ultimately, it was a weird, real clunky way of talking about it, I felt like, or overly complex way of talking about it. But basically, he was like, if we look at him in a screen, they can't get us.
Right.
Yeah.
That was like a reverse optics, I think he said, or something like that.
Which, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure why it did work on a
Right.
screen. Because if
Why
it's-
wouldn't it work?
Well, if it's supernatural, I just don't understand the mechanism by which they're transmitting whatever they're transmitting that makes you go
Right.
insane.
Well, exactly.
So, and I don't recall this specific like scene. Like I remember the part where he sees kind of like the
sees the-
earth and like the shrubbery kind of moving.
He sees the leaves. You
Right.
always see the leaves in the wind and then
Right,
the
so you
shadow,
don't
and that's
see-
all you see.
So you
Yeah,
would
he sees a big
think you'd
shadow.
have to see what he's seeing optically in order for it to affect him, but we don't see it on the camera, so you're not really sure what it is that's causing it.
So I got the sense, and maybe this is just the way they shot the entities, but I almost got the sense that they are essentially invisible or not. They're the shadow in this wind until they're seen, right? And when they're seen, it's like a veil is lifted, and then what they truly are is whether it's physically seeing or like your soul is exposed to them or something like that. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I mean, just talking for a second about the whole entity, what are they and how does this all work? I mean, I thought the same thing, that they're transparent, that you can't see them, because otherwise Sandra Bullock going down the car, even though she turned around and saw the cell phone, you'd see these monsters everywhere. You'd see them, right? And so they're definitely transparent. I mean, you can't see them on a regular day until they're kind of up on you. But I think it's at that point, even as that woman says that she was talking to her mom, they say in the movie that it shows you the most horrible scene or your greatest sadness, and it causes you to go insane.
Yeah,
They say that in there.
I think that is the one character hypothesizing, right?
Or it might have been on the
Charlie.
radio.
About the demons and
Yeah.
about all. He's writing the book, right? And he has all this background information about all this type of demons that do this sort of thing, and he's just kind of riffing. That's the sort of same sort of thing that about the news earlier you were talking about, where they're like, it's
Right.
not pathological, it's not viral, and so it's
Right.
like him giving his 2 cents about what it is or isn't. Yeah, I just kind of assumed that they are, they have to look at you, you have to look at them, and that's how it works. Like if it's one of these things where you have your eyes down and they can't get to you, then you're okay. Which kind of begged the question to me why like the blindfolds were such a big deal. Like, couldn't you just like shield your eyes and look down?
Just
like
even close your eyes.
Or like, yeah, what was the deal with not being able to close your eyes? Was it like they would compel you to look? I couldn't really figure
Yeah,
that
I
piece
got
out
the
either.
impression it was like because at the end where you could hear the voices, like that it not only messes with you visually, it's trying to get to you auditorily.
So that's interesting as well, because I kind of trying to figure out whether these entities are evolving over time, because they don't do any of that during the initial sort of apocalypse, right? That's like at the very end, not like at the end where they're literally speaking to her.
But that's because there are so many people around. There's so much other noise and chatter and stuff going on. I don't think that she's able to hone in on a specific track, right? I mean, maybe they haven't developed their voices yet specifically, but my thought was that there was just a lot going on.
I don't know. Don't you think all those nights they spent in that house, that whole crew, they wouldn't be whispering to them, saying, come out, and, whatever? Like,
So, like, say this, you have, like, the people that don't necessarily get affected by this. And you hear from the story that Jess is a generally happy person, so she would not be one to commit suicide. So maybe because Sandra Bullock had such a crappy life and John Malkovich is a douchebag, like they have so many traumatic issues that they can't, like the entities can't figure out which one to choose. So that's why they're harder until they can get them more people are gone.
Well, maybe that's interesting.
Whereas like other people who have like one single, traumatic incident, they're like, oh, like the woman who went into the car and it blew up, Lydia.
All the
and
really
it was her
good
mother
people.
because she kept saying, Mom, is that you? And then
Right.
she walked into the car. So they were able to pick on her.
Yeah, all the
you
really
know,
good
her
people are the
situation.
first to go,
Right.
type of thing. Oh, that's interesting.
Could be.
That's
Don't
my
know.
theory.
Yeah.
They're going through their prioritization chart, and all the good people are at the very top. They get knocked off
Easy
first.
pickings, yeah.
And then all the psychopaths are at the bottom, and they're just going to turn into converts. Could be.
As time passes, food supply concerns give rise to the discussion of leaving their safe house. Mallory, Charlie, and a few fellow survivors, Tom, Douglas, and Lucy, decide to go to a nearby marketplace to get supplies. They black out the windows in the car and use the car's proximity sensors and GPS to navigate their drive to the supermarket. During the drive, they encounter some of the creatures, but manage to drive off, arriving at the store. Inside the store, Mallory finds pet birds, which she decides to adopt. Douglas gets drunk and suggests that the group stays permanently in the supermarket, but others reject this idea. Hearing someone call for help, they open a loading dock door to let a man into the store. As the door opens, the birds begin to screech and flap their wings, indicating that they can detect the creatures without seeing them. The man in the loading dock attacks the group as he has been controlled by the creatures in order to infect other humans. Charlie sacrifices himself to save the others, who are able to make it back safely to the house. Later, Lucy and Felix steal the car, effectively abandoning everyone at the house without any means of transportation.
I really liked Charlie. Like he was this whole terrified guy, has his theories because he's trying to be an author. But yeah, he ends up like he's like weak. He doesn't want to go to the grocery store. He doesn't want to help go out of the house. He doesn't, want to put himself in that position, and he ends up saving everybody.
Well, he freaks out in the car. I mean, that actor did a convincing job in that car,
Yeah.
like freaking out.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. I know. He was a really enjoyable character as well. And then, of course, I love the whole idea that, they have to debate about going to the supermarket, right? They're running low on supplies. They have to get in this car. I love that they blacked out the windows, right? They use this paint. They paint the windows. They put the stuff on the inside. The one thing that I was a little bummed about is that I felt like the trailer showed too much. I felt like the trailer gave all this away, this entire scene. So even just watching the Netflix scrolling, the preview that they do, they showed you the whole, creatures coming up on the car. And so for me, it ruined that whole scene.
I didn't see the trailer.
Neither did I.
Oh.
But I see
it
what
was
you're
a
saying.
bummer.
Like that was a really good scene, and it was
Yeah.
ingenious.
Yeah.
So all I kept on thinking, unfortunately, is there's no way the streets are going to be clear enough for you to get the car even a mile down the road. Like there's going to be too many cars in the way, too many bodies, too much going on, aside from the creatures that are obviously, stalking living beings. I don't know. That was what was going through my mind as they were going. Although I will say that once the creatures or whatever entities descended on the car and all the proximity alarms are going off, and it was pretty tense.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. The whole time I was like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
Right.
GPS wouldn't even work that way. You just showed us the whole road littered with cars. Literally. There's no way. And the other piece was every little bump they were hitting, I thought they were rolling over bodies the whole time. And then they hit that one body, supposedly. And you were like, oh, really? I'm sure the street is just full of these.
Yeah, I think the one thing you have to accept when you watch this movie is that they are going to streamline the effects of not being able to see, right? Whether it's, navigating the woods at the end where she only has issues when the plot needs her to have issues, right? She's literally not just going through brambles and for hours and hours and hours, or it's this where the car can be driven back and forth without completely, not being able to get there. I mean, I think you have to deal with that, and accept it and just kind of move on.
Yeah, like they're minimizing the handicapping effects,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but it was still enjoyable. And I like the idea that they thought of, we can totally black this out and just use GPS. I mean, the idea was genius.
Right.
Go out there, and then they get to the supermarket. Love that John Malkovich beelines for the alcohol.
That's where
Gets
I'd be going.
Boozed up. You guys are the best friends ever.
Not to the birds, but to the alcohol.
Well, and I wrote in my notes, why not move into the grocery store? And then, lo and behold, 3 minutes later, John Malkovich is like, we're staying at the grocery store. And then they
Congratulations, Ray, you're an asshole.
I know. No, because here's the thing. I'm not saying leave the other people. I'm saying go get them and bring them back to the grocery store. I mean, they acted like this was the only run they were ever going to be able to do, and they weren't going to do it again, knowing that they were going to have to take another run anyway eventually. So I don't know what that whole argument was about, to be completely honest with you. I mean, if I was Sandra Bullock and the other folk, I'd be like, hey, John Malkovich, you can stay here, and we'll go get the other people and bring them here.
Right.
But I almost think it was a nod to Stephen King's The Mist.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the movie where everyone's in the grocery store and there's entities outside trying to get people. Now they have tentacles or whatever. It's not like they make people go insane necessarily. But I thought that was like their sly nod to that. But then also, I didn't feel like Charlie's death, needed to happen. Because the guy is kind of trying to force the door open, right? Doesn't somebody have the shotgun?
I think it was Sandra Bullock, but I don't think they knew at the time that I don't think they
They
knew
don't
that they
wanna
could
look.
see him because they didn't know if he would affect them.
They don't want to look. Remember, they all have their eyes down. They're like, don't look, don't look, don't
Yeah, but
look.
what's his name runs, looks at him and runs at the thing.
Well, that's because he had decided to sacrifice
You
himself
walk
at
up
that
to the
point.
door and you just put the shotgun in there and shoot him. I just don't think he had to hero run and jump through. I felt like that was a little much. I know you had to get rid of him, but
But the point was the character arc, right? To Helen's point, was the idea that he was like this shy guy. He didn't even want to go in the first place, and he takes him to his Superman. I mean, it's fine. I mean, I didn't love it. I mean, obviously, I would have much rather have kept Charlie.
Right.
But, it was another, I think, just movie gimmick, right?
Yeah.
Self-sacrifice.
I thought that he would, given the whole demonic speech that he gave with all the little demons, that he was going to maybe offer more knowledge to the situation since he was researching it.
I wish.
So to
That
have
would
him
have been
killed
cool.
off was
Yeah. He was a cool
crap.
character.
Yeah, he was a cool character.
Yeah.
well, you have to understand this movie's in the survival genre. Therefore, answers are not in supply, right? That's not the point of this genre of movie, is to supply answers.
Yeah, and you're right, Ray. We're in zombie apocalypse mode right now. So, yeah, anything goes. The one other, there were a lot of just small things that annoyed me throughout the movie, like the supermarket. One thing that really, really bugged me was that all the windows were frosted. What supermarket have you ever been to that had window coverings? Never. And they get in there and all the windows are already pre-covered and, basically they have to pull one shade down or something. He's feeling around the gumball machine for the one shade. Okay, guys, it's safe.
Well,
okay.
That's part of that streamlining. I mean,
Exactly,
every place only has
exactly.
one window they have to cover. Every window's always covered, and it's never literally you would spend an hour just making sure you've touched every glass and peeking to make sure there's no exposed glass. I mean, it would take a long time to make sure something was secure. So they had to streamline that thing.
Yeah. So from a screenplay or directorial standpoint, that definitely bothered me, but not enough to totally make me want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Now you have to accept it.
I think that they left out Olympia's arrival in this section, which I think carries some weight because they let her in. They have a lot of questions about her because of what's going on around them, but they end up letting her stay, which is weird that her due date was so close to Mallory's.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought at the time that being pregnant kind of gave you a little level of protection, but I guess it didn't. It was just a thing.
I was wondering the same thing too, because all of a sudden they're literally collecting these pregnant women. And
Right.
you're like, is there something to that? Very odd. Yes. Oh man, that scene was so tense too.
Mm-hmm.
When they're, let me in, and you're just like, don't let her in. I don't know. What do you
Right.
got?
Yeah.
And she
basically, breaks
she
them.
gets everyone killed.
Yes.
Yep.
Because she,
Yep, because she lets
as
him
she
Gary.
says to everyone, or I guess it was just to Mallory, that I am weak.
Yeah, I'm the
I've
weak
been,
one.
catered to my entire life by both my parents and my husband. I am
Mm-hmm.
I am not strong like you.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I kind of was offended's the wrong word, but okay, they picked a doughy girl to play this character, and she's soft. And so I felt like it was so stereotypical, it was almost insulting a little bit. I don't know. That was my take on it.
I really disliked her. I was
didn't
trying.
have a problem with her.
I was trying not to be completely annoyed and want to throw her out of the house, by the back of her hair. But she just, yeah. And I mean, being pregnant, you want to feel empathetic or at least sympathetic for her and, say, well, let's take care of you and let's take care of your baby. But, from the get-go, I was just like, Maybe I just felt like she was a liability as well, but
I also feel
didn't like it.
I'm not entirely sure it was in her character to alone open up the door for somebody. I feel like she would have been like, somebody's at the door, somebody's at the door. Like, I don't know that she would have been like, I'm going to open the door myself and let somebody in. Like, she's weak, she's scared. Like, that seems like a little bit more they explain it because she's saying,
she says it was like
that
me.
was like me. I understand that, I can buy that, but I don't know.
So I didn't have a problem with her. I guess I thought she was a little annoying in the beginning, but I kind of thought that this film was very diverse given the few characters that it had.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, give us a doughy girl.
Yeah.
Doughy girl.
Yeah.
That's right. Like to call it.
Doughy or doe-eyed?
Both. But
I was like, are we talking Pillsbury Doughboy here? I wasn't sure what we meant by doughy, but
yeah, I was kind of going down that line. I just felt like they were kind of like fat shaming her character in a way.
because she was so hungry in the beginning.
No,
Like,
but
wasn't she though?
Well, the whole thing, like, but they were like fat shaming her by saying, saying like, I left the house because I was so hungry, and then being like,
But she was pregnant. You're allowed to be fat when you're pregnant.
But I'm just saying,
and
she's
I thought I was starving my baby, and all you can think is like, girl.
lady, you could have survived
a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Oh, that is
That's
really
awful.
awful.
Well, but then they're like, oh, I'm like a big dumb cow. Like that's kind of like what I got out of it. Like it was, I don't know. I was annoyed at it. Anyway, I felt sorry for her character, the way that the movie treated her, but I was annoyed at her character within the actual narrative.
Oh, I guess I kind of just thought that they were trying to play opposites with Mallory.
I'm sure they were.
That like here's this girl full of hopes and dreams, and here's this girl who has no hopes and dreams.
Here's the other thing I think they were trying to do with her character. The daughter. So in the present time, of course, Mallory treats the boy and the girl slightly differently because the boy's hers and the girl is this annoying woman who got everyone killed, daughter. And I think when she's like, somebody's going to have to look, and the boy's like, I'll do it. And she's like, no, I'll decide, until the little girl seemed to like realize this girl doesn't like me. Mom doesn't like me, and she wants me to volunteer, so I die.
That girl's face.
Yeah.
So I was crying a little
Me too.
bit.
Yeah.
That was just, she did such an amazing job. That little
Yeah.
actress. Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that was another reason for her character to be how it was. So that you had a reason for Mallory to not just be like, it's my biological kid I want the most. It's more like, I also hold something against this girl's mother in some sense.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, not to, belabor the point, but cherry on the sundae is that she wanted to name her child Jasmine.
Any Disney princess.
Cinderella.
Yeah.
Ariel. Oh, man.
That was,
You're going to go Sleeping Beauty. Just let's go right down the list. That was so awkwardly embarrassing.
Mulan.
Rapunzel. No, I just thought because I keep wanting to just say Sandra Bullock, but Mallory gave her the little, I don't know, Hello Kitty type thing, and I just thought she broke character there and started to have this like, almost like she was taking care of her as a child right before.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean,
loose,
they were friends.
I mean, that was cute.
Friends.
I'm sorry. I didn't have a problem
with
her.
They were roommates.
I mean, no, but they were buddies. She
I think they
she
were
wasn't
going
antagonistic.
to. I think they would have bonded further if they had the chance. No,
maybe.
Okay.
I would say to the extent that somebody as tough as Mallory could deal with somebody who wants to call her daughter Cinderella. Not like BFFs, but I mean,
better than girl.
You are, yeah. I mean, I know, right? And you are in survival mode, so beggars can't be choosers.
Soon thereafter, Olympia, a pregnant survivor, lets a wandering survivor, Gary, into the house against Douglas's protest, and the group locks up Douglas in the garage as punishment. Gary speaks of infected survivors who are insane and who are compelled to force unaffected humans to look at the creatures. When both Olympia and Mallory go into labor, Gary reveals himself to be one of the insane people he described. He attacks the survivors in the house and proceeds to remove all of the coverings from the windows. Gary murders Douglas and forces Olympia and another survivor to view the creatures, resulting in their immediate suicides. Tom barely manages to kill Gary and save Mallory and the two newborns, leaving all the other dead survivors in the house.
Oh, man. This whole scene. Yeah. First of all, what, our old lady doesn't even get a shout out? She doesn't even get a name?
No, I wrote her name down.
Was it Cheryl? Is she down there? Cheryl? Lucy? I don't know. That's not cool, Wikipedia. But nevertheless, so this guy comes in, and again, you're having this very tense scene. And right, you're immediately thinking he's a psycho. Because he's telling the story, he killed somebody else, he stole their suit, he put it on. But I was looking at him because I was trying to think, all right, if you're like a crazed dude from a mental institution, have you shaved? Would you have any other prison markings? What would that look like? The suit probably wouldn't actually fit you all that well. And the way that they played it off was, that suit was perfectly tailored. And it seemed to fit him very well. You didn't get to see his eyes really close. So you could tell already, I felt like from that first scene, that there was a little something up with his eyes. Mm-hmm. But you just kind of went, all right, well, they're not totally infected, right? But then, of course, they kept talking about the bag, check the bag, which is kind of like your clue to be like, they got distracted. But I thought that was, again, a very real moment when you just have like all this shit going on where you're basically like somebody's like, check the bag, and other people are like, get the gun. And somebody's like, throw him outside. And at this point, I kind of thought it was almost like 12 Angry Men type of thing. Like you're just trying to listen to all these different voices and where is that truth? What do we need to follow? What do we actually need to act upon? And I thought they kind of did a good job of the cacophony of trying to figure out that scene.
So first of all, that actor's always bad. Like he always plays a bad person. So if you ever see him,
what else was he in? Because he was familiar.
Well, he was in Taboo, which he actually didn't play a bad person. But I do have a question about his eyes because I'm not entirely sure that his eyes weren't normal at the beginning. Like I had a question as to whether or not once you saw his eyes were really green, like and weird looking. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, were his eyes always like that, or can he like change his eyes to be normal and then change his eye when he gets crazy? Does his eyes get green? Or when he looks out there and looks at them, does it like give him green infected eye power or something like that? You know what I mean? And also, I question his origin story. I'm not sure he was an insane person. I kind of thought it could be that he was one of the insane people, or his story was true, that the insane people grabbed him and his buddies and forced them to look, and he was just one of those people who, although not in an insane asylum, was, whatever characteristics you have to withstand that, and he withstood it and then became one of them. I was unclear.
Yeah, it goes back to your, the entities kind of evolving type situation where maybe he was able to kind of become normal for a bit because he was in the house for a while before he went buck wild. Mm-hmm. But you also see it, throughout where the Tom, I don't want to get too far ahead, but when he's shooting or he sees the entities at the end and mm-hmm. he kind of says, I have to shoot this last guy, and then shoots himself. So you're able to withhold it for a period of time.
Well, I think Gary's was infiltrating that house specifically to
right.
turn all these people. And he was bad when he came in. He wasn't I don't think he was infected and yet wasn't.
I think he was looking. He had to hold it off long enough to get it into a scenario where everyone was distracted and he could take them all out.
Yeah. And his sketches, which are pretty much the only indication we have as to what these creatures and or maybe what you see, I guess I should say, when you're looking. So I thought that was interesting. And I will say that one of those pictures pretty much is Cthulhu. If you look at it, it's pretty much like an octopus-looking dude.
Yeah, they were blobby to me. I was hoping for some more.
Yeah. All different kinds of drawings. Yeah, I thought that the idea was cool because the rest of the movie, you have these invisible creatures, and you are wondering if they're ever going to sort of CGI something for you, by the end of the movie. And I'm always a big fan of the, leave it to the imagination. The mystery of the imagination is better than anything you're going to legitimately CGI for the viewer on there. Certainly not in everything, like a War of the Worlds or something. Sometimes you just have to see. But I liked that they used sort of that mechanic of those drawings to show you something, but they could have been somewhat figurative. They're right there were somewhat artistic interpretations. So it was kind of bizarre to me how he delicately laid them out, like his palette of pictures before he went, totally on his killing spree. Thought that was interesting, just a little bit too on the nose. Was like a little like, I am doing this to show you, the viewer, what these aliens / monsters / entities could possibly look like. So I thought that was a little but it was so cool to I think get to see them.
I thought that the precision of his laying it out was more tying into his obsession of, because they kept saying it's beautiful, it's beautiful. So it almost felt like he was like, just like, let me show you the beauty of all this, or I just need to look at all of my beautiful pictures of this thingy,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I have a little behind the scenes knowledge to drop on you. So apparently they did film a scene with Mallory and one of the monsters. The studio apparently was telling them, you've got to show us something. You got to have the monster in there. You can't do the whole movie without a monster. And so they filmed it, and I guess it was unintentionally hilarious. And so they were like, it just doesn't work.
Well, good. I'm glad they cut it.
Yeah, they left it out.
Because honestly, I would have been annoyed. Like, it would have been one of those where, again, you're like almost all the way to the end of the movie, and you're like, are we ever going to see these monsters? Then you finally see it, probably in that monster scene. I'm sorry, in the forest scene where she falls down and the leaves come up. Because you're waiting for it. You're waiting for the monster to appear. And I was like, I swear to God, if a big, stupid CGI octopus appears, right? I was like, this is going to ruin the whole movie.
I have a description of the monster. Did
Go
you
ahead.
get that?
I think I did.
Green man with a horrific baby face, and it was snake-like. So I'm kind of glad they cut it.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible.
Well, in which you don't know whether what they're seeing is specific to their own, interpretation of it, right?
Right.
So,
Well, that's what they're saying earlier.
yeah.
So her most horrifying nightmare is a green baby face snake. Well, that makes sense because that comes back to her babies when they talked about them seeing their babies as entities, as like the scorpions and spiders or whatever. So it's kind of a relevant manifestation for Sandra Bullock's character. Pretty freaking wild, though.
Yeah.
5 years later, Tom and Mallory are living together with the children, whom Mallory calls only boy and girl, when they receive a transmission from a survivor stating that they are well and safe at a community downriver. Tom wants to go to the safe community, but Mallory fears it's a trap. Shortly after the transmission, Mallory flees with the two children when a group of infected survivors finds them in the house, in which they are hiding in and attempt to kill them. Tom manages to kill all the infected, but sees a creature and shoots himself. Mallory decides they have to seek better shelter. Blindfolded, she takes the children, who are also blindfolded, and the pet birds to a rowboat next to a river. Their journey is harrowing and dangerous. After surviving raging rapids, an insane infected man, and even capsizing, they make landfall. The entities tempt the children and Mallory to remove their blindfolds by mimicking the voices of loved ones, but are unsuccessful, and the small family eventually reaches the community. Mallory learns that the compound is an old school for the blind, and most members of the community are blind, making them immune to the entities. She also reunites with Dr. Lapham, the doctor who attended her during her pregnancy checkup a few years prior. She finally gives the children names, Olympia for the girl and Tom for the boy, and releases the birds that have long kept her family from harm.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if this was just me, but I felt like I didn't know Mallory's name until the girl was calling it. Did you guys know that her name was Mallory the rest of the movie?
I had that issue with Tom.
Ah.
It's not until like the very end I was like, oh, his name's Tom.
Yeah. And it was interesting because when she calls them boy, girl, and it wasn't until the daughter really was like, Mallory. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting because at first I was thinking, oh, I just missed it. But then I was thinking, no, they did that intentionally, that they didn't use her name either at all or often anyways. So she was sort of a nameless character throughout most of the movie, where they did use Tom and Gary and Olympia. They used the household members' names, so you did hear them. They didn't use Tom as much, to your point, because I actually got him confused with Gary at some point. But so I thought that was interesting just from a personification and from, again, as you talk about attachment. Again, one of the metas through this I thought was just the whole attachment theme of her inability to have feelings and, create emotions and attachments to others. And certainly I felt by not naming her essentially through a lot of this film that we as viewers had an attachment issue with her as well.
So one of the tropes of the survival subgenre is this sort of lack of names, or people not using names often, or giving very archetypal names like boy, girl, man, that sort of thing. It seems to be a reoccurring theme within those stories.
I did not know that.
I have to say the whole river part was intense. So they go back and forth, and I know we mentioned the timeline before, but I do think it was probably to make you feel like it was an extended part for the rowing scenes, so that you didn't think that it was like, oh, only 20 minutes, that like it was throughout the whole movie she's rowing and rowing and rowing. But when she gets to that insane affected man, my God, my heart, there's little kids, and she's got this machete and she's got a gun, and I'm like, how are you going to take this guy out?
Oh my gosh, you're right.
It was insane. And then the rapids.
It was very intense. It was intense. And then, of course, just like to your point earlier, Helen, your heart just aches with the scene with the kids. And so they break halfway through the scene earlier, then they revisit again with, one of us is going to have to look, and somebody's going to have to. And all you can think is, Mallory, these are like 5-year-old kids. Do you really think, first of all, they even know the difference between right and left?
Right.
And even if they did, your right is their left. So how in the world is this possibly going to work? And, so at the end of the day, Ray and I were even just saying, like, as that boat's going down the rapids, you got to be kidding me. You better have one arm on each of those kids, right? Get your butt down in that boat. Your oars are going to break anyways. Pull the oars up, hold on to those kids like for your dear life. And if that boat capsizes, just hope to God you have any idea where those kids are.
Yeah, the idea that they would be in that boat and not tied to each other was a little weird. Because that's the very first thing I thought is like, you should be tied to each other with rope so that if anybody falls out, you are all still together. And that was, and then she's sitting up in the seat as they go through the rapids. Pull the oars in, get down, hunker down, and just ride that thing out.
So just poor survival skills. I mean, again, it wasn't enough to be like, this movie's ridiculous. But it was just a survival sort of.
And who knows what boating experience she has.
Exactly.
She might not have known what to expect at all.
No, it's true. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make a story interesting to watch. And, that's what you have.
So what did you guys think about the radio call from Rick?
First of all, you don't trust anybody named Rick in any movie. You just don't do it. And I was surprised that this guy was a good guy. I'm still not convinced he was. And the actor who played him is always a crazy person, too. So
yeah, he's always evil, that actor,
really?
too.
Who was that?
With the crazy eyes, the old dude.
I knew he was a crazy old blind man, but I don't know who he was from either.
Oh, man, I'm trying to remember.
He's in the movie Identity, which we referenced in one of the earlier podcast episodes. But anyway.
I don't remember him. So I was not, oh God. But when you heard the voice over the thing, I was thinking The Walking Dead. You're going to go to this supposedly safe haven area, and it's going to not be a safe haven, and they're going to eat you.
Now I got to be honest with you. If they just showed up there and Rick Grimes was there as the sheriff, that would have been balls awesome.
Yeah, I mean, all I could think is you just discovered, or you knew since Gary, that you have coherent madman zombies out there, right? Like these alien advocates.
Cultists.
Okay. Alien advocates, whatever. That are totally coherent. And you're going to trust some, random dude named Rick who gave you little to no details. Sounded super creepy, too.
Right. Asked about the kids.
Are some of them children? And you're just like, nope, right there. Children cannibal. Like, no. And obviously Sandra Bullock's character was like, I'm not going to go type of thing. And Tom was the one who wanted to go. So, and the fact that he shot them all, I was a little shocked. I mean, obviously that's the whole story. She has to go. But you're kind of thinking, it's like when you're in those team building situations and they're like, your plane crashes in the mountains and you have these 20 items. Which 10 do you take with you? And you go, no, well, you don't move, dummy. You don't leave the plane. They're going to come and find you. So don't leave where you're. It was almost like, do you have a better chance of surviving to stay? And yes, they set it all up with all the foods going and the steam, and we got to go. But of course, that's the whole point. But on some level, you're like, this is not a good idea.
Well, in the way that they shot the whole thing with Tom, like if you can take your blindfold off and you can shoot a bunch of people and you can move around for like, I don't know, a minute without going insane because you don't run into one of these entities, Why don't you just close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes? Like, why aren't they doing more of that? Like, obviously, it's not just being outside that's making them go insane. Like, and he even, like, feels it behind him as it comes up on him, and he turns around and looks at it. Like, close your eyes at that moment. Like, it feels like people can sense it before it, like, gets to a point where it's going to infect you. I know that that's probably just traumatic, the way they had to shoot it to make it feel dramatic, but the way they do that, the time elongation makes it seem like you could avoid it.
I think it's also compelling you to look, though. So it's not just, if you happen to look at it.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I know. I don't know. I'm wishy-washy on that, whether you're actually compelled or not.
And I was a little bit of a realist with Tom's scene because I figure he's out there trying to shoot up all these guys. He doesn't know how many there are. They're running around. So I figured, he's spinning around potentially thinking some other guy or gal is sneaking up on him to shoot him. So it was just a natural instinct to turn with his eyes open. He had already come to the foregone conclusion, I'm going to sacrifice myself and shoot these guys. But I did love the fact, to what you're calling out, right, is that, you can go out and hang out and, like, walk around with your eyes open as long as one of those alien creatures or monsters or entities aren't around. So you could theoretically, to your point exactly, either open them, close them, or again, listen, go with the birds, listen for the wind, listen for the voices. There could be other cues that could help you.
Yeah, if you had those birds in a box, you could just walk with them, and as soon as they start chirping, close your eyes. Right? Like,
and don't move.
And like whatever. I mean, they didn't really seem to be able to physically interact with you. I didn't think. I mean, she runs away from them at the end, but that's more like because they're so loud and compelling that she had to get away from them, more than it is like she feared them, like ripping her blindfold off and forcing her eyes open. Obviously, they need the cultists to do that. I'm going to call them cultists. They need the cultists to do that for them.
Yeah, there was some sort of, I guess, corporal type, or I don't know if it was the wind, because if the girl, when she was about to take her blindfold off, because she wasn't sure if it was Mallory or not, that her hair goes up.
Well, yeah,
so like something shifted, so they might not be able to fully take off here, but they could do something.
Well, there's a wind in the leaves, right? That's you always see that. That's like indicative of their approach. And then you see like the clouds, or you saw
it was like weird that one strand lifted. It wasn't like
yeah.
It was like her whole hair was blowing. It was like one where you knew it was like...
It was almost static electricity.
Yeah.
Like the way that... Yeah, that was interesting.
Well, and then in the forest at the end, you get the old lost smoke monster effect of all the
trees
moving and swaying.
Yeah, I was like, how big is this thing?
Or a few of them.
Well, there's I'm assuming there's untold numbers of them roaming around or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I didn't get to talk about back at the very beginning, but... So is it realistic that this type of event would topple the entire world? Because I kind of got the impression they knew pretty early on. I mean, it was on TV. Mm-hmm. Don't leave your house. Stay inside and you'll be kind of safe. And although we have cultists running around, it doesn't seem like their number is huge. It would seem to me that like the United States government would be underground in Washington, D.C. pretty safe.
I mean, I guess it really depends on, like, I guess it's trying to show you how dependent we are on site, but you would think that there would be a lot of people on their cell phones who were oblivious to everything going on, Yeah, I mean, they're tied to, like, whatever we're looking at that.
I'm not saying...
Would you really notice?
Well, I'm not saying a lot of people wouldn't be dead. I just mean... You would think some command and control structure of the United States would still be somehow in effect. They'd be using ham radios. They'd be in basements. You'd be underground. You'd be in sewer systems. Like, it wouldn't be this type of thing where it was like everybody's dead except for a couple people.
What I was impressed about is like the water and the electricity and all that was still functioning.
I felt like 5 years later, though, what you see is they have those water jugs with lights in them. Did you notice?
No, I didn't notice that.
So I think they had lost electricity.
Okay.
And they were kind of making do with maybe some solar lamps or something like that. But I thought that was cool. I mean, definitely stage lighting going on, so it was way brighter than you could ever get with, a gallon of water type of thing. But I thought that was clever. Again, just the little camping trivia there. So I was going to say the one piece kind of jumping forward as well, a little bit to Ray's point, is just the idea that we never got to the point where they shifted to fighting the monsters. So we never really broke, the surface on troubleshooting. What was going on, or how to kill them, or how to deal with them, or, whether it was this opening or shutting of the eyes, or alternative methodologies. I mean, earlier, they certainly tried through the video cameras or whatnot, but even when they get to the blind community, it's really more of a safe harbor. You don't get the impression at all that they're attempting to go out there and deal with whatever. Separate from the fact that, again, you're wondering, where are they getting their food? What are they doing for electricity or bathrooms or anything like that with that amount of people there? Who knows? We'll just go with it. But I thought that would almost be, if there was a chapter 2, you could imagine that they would then start flipping that lens to doing something more proactive. To your point, Ray, maybe the government is still there. They're just undercover. Maybe they can't get the word out because XYZ, whatever. Again, these guys are on the West Coast. Maybe the government's mostly underground on the East Coast type of thing. I don't know. But certainly, yeah, no real discussion on like how do we deal with these guys other than just keeping our eyes shut.
That's because you're in the survival subgenre, and that's not what they do.
But that's 5 years later.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just saying that's the narrative type, right? Is they it's not about that. It's about surviving. It's not about fighting back. But I will say that the blind school, that brings up a good question, because they go in there and all of a sudden they go into the inner
Sanctum.
Yeah, the inner sanctum, which is like outside, except it has a iron dome, sort of like atrium, and it just has vines over it. And then my question is, what's the deal with the inside outside? I don't understand that. That's the one piece of the mythology of the entities that I really think I don't understand. Like, at no time, it seems like, do the people seem concerned at the beginning that these things can come in the house. It's just like, if we just don't look outside, if we don't go outside and look, then we'll be safe. Like, I would immediately think, if I open the door, they're going to come in. If I open the garage door, they're going to come in. Like, they're going to get in somehow, even though I don't know what they are. And nobody seems concerned about that. And so what does that mean? What about an aircraft carrier? I mean, aircraft hangar. Could the door be open to an aircraft hangar? And could I be standing inside? Can they come in there? Could they not come in there? Like, I don't understand that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it almost seemed like they had to be invited in. Like with the,
Romania vampires.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely felt like they could come in. I mean, to your point, they weren't overly concerned. But, even with the door, I mean, they could just keep the door wide open if they were all that concerned. I felt like they wanted to keep it shut.
Well, they wanted to keep it shut so they didn't see outside, but
also to let them in, I felt like.
I didn't get that impression at all. I got the impression that the only way that the entities were going to get those people who are inside is they sent the crazy people in there to
bring them out.
Yeah, I don't know.
That they were protected by that wall. Because I was like, can't they just climb a tree and get onto that atrium?
Yes.
Yeah,
that was a little...
Well, that was like one bad fire and what? Like, it's just an iron grating. Like, they could just come... Can they come through? I don't know.
Yeah.
What happens when it's fall? Right? I mean, I thought the same thing. You're kind of like, that's a little bit of weak. That whole ending was a little convenient, let's be honest. So it was kind of done a little bit for effect. But again, you just kind of go with it.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I know you're saying that this is a survival story and you have all these questions that aren't answered, but I had so many questions. And I want to know the answers. I'm not happy about this. What was it about the crazies that allowed them to stay alive even though they were now driven to fanatical worship of whatever it was?
I thought they were just the worst of the worst. So they had taken all these previous murderers and horrible people, and maybe that's why you have one businessman mixed in there.
Yeah.
I don't know, businessman driven to murder. So it was kind of like, my hypothesis was sort of in the 12 Commandments world of, you're being judged. It's the opposite, and we're taking the dregs, and they're unaffected and just now being wielded to go out and continue to kill all the good people.
Did you just say 12 Commandments?
I don't know. Maybe you did.
Yeah.
12
I think
steps.
I did. 12 steps, yeah.
10 commandments.
Yeah.
I think there's 10.
Oh, no. You're going to revoke my Catholic card.
We just added 2. It's fine. The other question I had was, what do we think that the monsters are getting from killing people? It's not like they were eating brains or drinking blood or whatever. They're just killing people. I want to know. Why are you doing this?
That's a good point. And what sustained them if they were living in any sort of life source kind of way.
Right. It made me think on that level, it wasn't aliens, that it was more demonic, because you're making these people face those fears and their sadness, that was making you happy or grow. And maybe that's how they multiplied.
Yeah. I'd buy that.
All right, Helen, do you have any other fun facts or behind the scenes things you want to bring up
I
before we
have a
move on to
couple
the
of
review?
fun facts. So we all know this was based on a book, but the movie actually had a more positive spin. But I don't want to reveal that in case you do want to go back and read the book.
You can spoil.
Yeah, I can spoil?
Spoil away.
Okay. So in the book, when you get to the blind sanctuary, some people were literally, they had literally taken their sight from them. So I guess that would have been more traumatic to see people who had stabbed their eyes out or whatever.
I actually think that would be more realistic.
I agree. If you didn't think about the blindfold system, but I don't know.
If you didn't have
Either
any cotton
take your eyes
available.
out or blindfold yourself.
No eye patches around.
Yes.
I will bring up one thing I did research a little bit, which was the relationship between Tom and Mallory. So obviously Sandra Bullock, and the actor who plays Tom is Trevant Rhodes, I believe. Sandra Bullock was born in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
So she's 54 years old, which even if I start thinking, okay, does she have a kid at 54 or 50 or whatever it is?
Yeah, but she's not aged to that level.
No, that's okay.
Mama.
Can you guess how old Tom is and when he was born? Let's say when he was born. When do you think he was born?
All right, I want to go with 82.
Yeah, 1990.
Oh God, he's a young one.
He is 28 years old.
I mean,
She
they
is-
make a little reference to that in the movie,
yeah, a little
which I
bit.
thought was cute. That she was in this
But not that she's
cradle robbing, right?
Well,
But not that she's double his age.
No,
No.
so get this.
Whoa.
When he was born, she was 26 years old, almost
Oh
how
my
old he is now.
God,
So I mean,
yeah.
I don't care. It
She's
doesn't matter
filming
to me.
Speed with Keanu.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's just funny because you usually don't see the older woman and the younger man. And in this case, you do, which I think it's
Go
appropriate to the
Sandra.
story.
Go Sandra.
Yeah, I mean, she is smoking hot.
I mean, she's beautiful, and he looked older.
He did. I mean, he was
he was
also a
fine.
very attractive man.
He didn't look like a baby.
No,
I appreciated the fact that not once did they mention his race in the movie.
Right.
Like
Or Charlie's.
he was a veteran. He was, doing his job, and and he served the purpose in the plot, and him being African American didn't have anything to do with it. And I thought that to me, that's like reaching real sort of parody as far as roles for actors, when you can be an African American and play a role, and it's not because that's an African American character that you have to
right.
portray.
And I have two additional diversity notes. One, there was actually more than one African American in the movie. Yay. Thank you for not having a stereotypical one. Check the box. But also, Ray, something you'd be really happy about. We did not have the stereotypical handicapped American. We did not have the mentally handicapped American that was like the gifted child, a la Stephen King.
Oh yeah, we didn't have that. Which that'll be in part 2, because that's going to have to figure out how to fight them. Have to figure out how to fight them with some supernatural kid who has a blind kid who has some sort of supernatural sight. Anyway,
I have another fun fact. So Sandra Bullock was actually blindfolded during this entire filming.
Oh.
She would continually run into the camera, and it gave the director, who I want to give a shout out, that was female, a heart attack because every night she couldn't sleep because she was just worried about, I guess, injuries. While holding the children, though, she took a layer of the blindfold off so she could see outlines, and they were chained to her so that if she were to fall or run into something, that they wouldn't get jostled around too much, because obviously they were young.
Oh my gosh, that's intense.
Yeah, she wouldn't even cut. The director wanted her to cut holes in so that she could see, and she said no.
Wow.
So, kudos to her, because, yes, it looked legitimate, and yes, it was legitimate, but...
Yeah.
That's
intense.
Yeah.
so another thing I found out was that they actually filmed this in an actual house. It wasn't a stage or a sound studio or anything like that. Soundstage, I'm sorry. It was in an actual house, and they were actually in the house, and it's all... boarded up and painted, and the windows are covered the way it is in the movie, and so they actually had this sort of captive feeling as they were filming in the house, all of them in there. So it was like that, and apparently John Malkovich, in between takes, walked around with a shotgun and talked to those birds all the time.
I can totally see
in fact,
Of course he did.
the actor that played Charlie actually thought that John Malkovich's character was talking to the birds. He figured that was in the movie. That he's talking to these birds, that's a thing in the movie. And it's not, obviously. He's like, when I saw the movie, I was like, what?
Did you cut a scene?
Yeah. So, and also, John Malkovich likes to text Bitmojis. to people, apparently.
Oh, no. I don't even want to think that. You've already put that in my mind. That's just not right.
I'm just telling you. There you go.
John Malkovich Bitmojis. John Malkovich riding a unicorn. Talking to birds.
Since, like, the title of the Bird Box, and you get that there's these birds and that they're kept in a box and all that. So I had read a little bit more about what Charlie's demons were and what the birds meant. And it says that in many cultures, birds are associated with spirits that guide people from the land of the living to the land of the dead, which I did not know. I just thought the birds just sensed the demonic presence and kind of went
very
twittering away.
Well, and you get the whole canary in the coal mine
I was
thing
going to say
as
that.
well,
Yeah, that's
which is always
on the
interesting.
nose.
So the one thing I just want to hit on too, since it was one of the big meta themes, was, Sandra Bullock coming full circle with the kids and finally naming them at the end, right? The names of their parents, essentially. Well, Tom was, her lover. But I will say the one ding I will give Sandra was just, the idea that she's come full circle and she's now fallen in love with these children and she takes on that mantle as their mother, I just wasn't really buying it. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I just felt like, I don't know, maybe there wasn't enough of just connectivity during all that survivalist instinct stuff going on. But you finally get there, and I'm like, she's still like the cranky old cantankerous Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The only scene that they sort of showed you a crack in that sort of armor is when she says nobody's going to look, and we're going to go by the rapids without looking, because that was her like not wanting to sacrifice either of the children. Other than that, yeah, she pretty much was in survival mode.
I guess I disagree with the two of you. So I felt like when she reached that place, she kind of was able to think back on like when she and Olympia had that connection, Olympia the mother, not Olympia the newly named girl. And then she reaches the sanctuary and she's like, I don't have to be in survival mode anymore. I see what my survival mode did to Olympia the girl when she almost took her blindfold off. And I realized that I need to be more of the nurturing mother that we had with Tom when he was there. And, when she finished the story for Tom, like, I just felt like it was her transition. And now she can fully go on to the hoping and dreaming that she's supposed to, that's how she's going to live her life from now on.
Yeah, I guess what's difficult about that is she never seemed to be that in the beginning anyway, right? She was kind of didn't want to be a parent to begin with.
Right.
So you went right from that into, I'm going to become a survivalist. And then she comes out sort of, it would have made more sense if she'd have had more humanity at the beginning and then descended into this survivalist mode because of what happened and then came out of it. I guess, to me.
Yeah, I saw her
That's fair.
humanity through her relationships, not through herself as a mother or through herself solely alone. Her relationship with Tom and her relationship with her sister, I think was enough for me to say it's there. It just depends on the situation and when it's going to come out.
Yeah. All right, now that we've reviewed the movie, it's time to rate it. Only the best movies make it to the top of the hill, and to be the best, they have to perform in 3 categories. First, technical composition, which represents how well the movie is made, including script, directing, cinematography, acting, and effects. Second, impact, which represents how well the movie accomplished its emotional intent. Was it scary or funny? Did it make you question mankind or the nature of your reality? And finally, third, enjoyment, which is pretty simple. How much did you enjoy the movie? Would you watch it again? Do you never want to see it again? So our scale runs from 1 to 10, 1 through 3 being pretty poor, 4 through 6 being average, and 7, 8, and 9 being good, and 10 being the best. So let's start this by talking about the technical composition. Anne, do you want to take us through yours?
Okay, so I'll jump in. So you guys probably know by now, mostly I focus in technical on, again, technical effects, directorial shots, cinematography. At the end of the day, this movie didn't have a ton of really, right, not a lot of CGI other than when we had the leaves and the shadows and things kind of going on there. We had the explosions that would fall into technical as well, the scenes, the bodies. I think we've talked about other movies before trying to overextend themselves a little bit too much into special effects, and I think that their scores will fall because of that. This movie, I thought that what they set out to accomplish from a technical perspective was done very well, so I actually gave this a 9 in technical.
Okay, Helen?
I agree with Anne. I gave mine an 8. I thought that the acting and the plot and everything was just really well done. I thought it was all really well put together. It wasn't overly done like Anne had said, so I gave mine an 8.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I think the movie handled a lot of the technical aspects very proficiently. I think the sound design was excellent to complement the fact that they weren't showing the entities very much at all, which was good that they didn't use a lot of CGI. A couple places where the film didn't do as well, I don't think, is with the pacing. I appreciated the split timeline, but I felt we didn't get a lot of time with the other characters in the house. Like, it kind of moved very quickly, and then they were kind of dead and moving on. I like the mythology of the entities, but the whole, like, what's inside, what's outside, why can't they come inside thing was kind of left unclear. So I gave it a 7.
That's still not too shabby.
Nope. Okay, let's move on to impact. Helen, you want to give us your impact?
I gave my impact a 7. I was pleasantly surprised that they kind of had a more positive theme in this, in my point of view. So, like, with this release at the end of the year, for anybody who had a troubling 2018, you can kind of say, look, you could either take their survival thing and just not live life to the fullest, or you can kind of change your way of thinking and be more positive and have these hopes and dreams and get through it. So now that 2019's here, you can start fresh. I kind of took it as that kind of perspective. So I enjoyed that. And then the rest of this, the way the movie kind of, I don't know, just the whole not having your sight thing and how that kind of played out, that was creepy. They did a good job being creepy. So that part was also impactful.
Okay.
Oh man, look at Helen whipping out like the meta real life overlay, putting the rest of us to shame. So for me, I gave this impact right down the middle of 5. I was torn a little bit. Obviously, we've got the other scores to really balance it out. But for impact for me at the end of the day, right, there wasn't a lot of graphic horror, which was good in this. Not that I needed it. That was, we didn't have like limbs or intestines or anything like that. So from a gruesome impact, it wasn't super high. From a psychological impact, I didn't think it was crazy high for me either. I love the suspense. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed that. But from the whole, does it make me question my reality, so to speak? No. I mean, I thought it was well done, but I kept the impact pretty warmly in that 5 area.
All right, so I thought the film delivered on its impact, right? It was a tense psychological horror flick, and as a parent, the whole keep your kids alive sort of narrative is a strong one. It didn't lean into the whole normal supernatural horror scares, but this, like I said before, the sound really helped sell the kind of frightening nature of the entities. It was gripping, it was tense, it was, I think, tragic and sad, and frightening, and so I gave it a 9. All right, and finally, let's talk about enjoyment. Anne.
Okay, so as I had alluded to in my last rating, even though impact for me was like it didn't blow my mind, but I really enjoyed this. I still like the story. I like the fast pace. I like the sort of, 12 Angry Men, or even like 10 Little Indians, right? Like Agatha Christie, like you're just waiting for all these people to die type of thing. So I like that suspense and the flipping back and forth. So I actually gave the enjoyment an 8 on this. I'd probably watch it again.
All right, Helen?
I also gave it an 8. I would watch it again. I thought it was definitely enjoyable, and I was wondering if I watched it again, if I would catch something I missed the first time.
Okay, well, I didn't enjoy watching this movie. And I probably won't watch it again, barring a sequel. After having children of my own, I have discovered that horror and survival movies where the focus is on like parental figures trying to keep young kids alive is not my jam. Movies like Mama, where the father's going to kill the girls and commit suicide, and then the supernatural entity takes and kills the father and raises the kids. Yeah, not my thing. So I actually have like a visceral sort of resentment of these types of movies when they play with that narrative. I feel like it's emotionally manipulative. That's kind of how I feel what it is.
Oh, so the kids weren't that bad in this one.
No, not the kids. it's the idea of sort of the tension around keeping the kids alive. I feel like when you build that narrative up, it's I don't want to say cheap, but it's an easy way to get people to feel scared and like tense, because you're obviously using these poor innocent kids as like the pawn.
The bait, yeah.
Yeah, the bait. So anyway, but I will say that having said that, I did like aspects of the mythology. So throughout today, I've been thinking about, what my feelings are on the movie. And it hit me that this might actually be one of the few successful Lovecraftian horror tales. So the entities are largely unseen, but what little info we have and we're given, especially in the sketches, definitely feels Lovecraftian. It's like, the Cthulhu pictures and stuff. You also have the entities making people go insane and commit suicide, which is a hallmark of H.P. Lovecraft's stories, at least the go mad part, maybe not the suicide part. And then there are even devotees, the cultists, which are kind of the mortal people trying to enact the vision of whatever these entities are. And even the Altered Eyes, which is a callback to like John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, when they kind of get under the sway of these entities, their irises become different. So it's even like connected in that way. And I love all of that. So if they make a sequel of this movie and they choose a different genre other than the keep your little kids alive, I'm there for it. I'd watch it. I'd be interested in it, especially if it delves deeper into the mythology and how they can defeat them, or at least, whatever brings society back. But this movie, I rated a 2.
Ouch.
Wow.
Well, then Helen and I are going to go get some popcorn and watch this again.
Yeah.
You can go watch Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Or some cotton candy.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Have at it. I'll take the nips any day.
Oh, Lucy.
Hey, that's what I would say.
I think in a different way.
Maybe.
All right. So just to wrap it up a little bit, the listeners can probably tell, obviously Helen and I rated this one a little bit higher than Ray, sharing the love for potentially rewatching this. Helen, you scored this movie the highest at a 7.67. I came in right in the middle at a 7.33. And Ray, you're bringing up the bottom at a solid 6.
Yeah, that's okay. It's still a little above average.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Good job, Netflix. So all in, this movie actually came to an even 7.
Which is the same score we gave The Exorcist, which I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, but okay.
Oh, very different way. Good in different ways.
Sure, I agree with that. All right, well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, help us grow our audience. Rate and review us on iTunes, and please share with your friends and family on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. Give us a shout out to tell us how we're doing or suggest movies to review. You can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @HilltopHorror. You can also email hosts.hth@gmail.com. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Hilltop Horror Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Ray Richards, and on behalf of my co-host, thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time.